The Lunatic Den. Ambrose returns and confronts Paul Heyman on Smackdown. Dean Ambrose is back, and he's got unfinished business with Paul Heyman. What happens when the Lunatic Fringe storms into Smackdown and goes face-to-face with the man behind Roman Reigns' empire? Tensions explode in this jaw-dropping backstage confrontation you have to see to believe. In this explosive WWE moment, Dean Ambrose shocks the WWE Universe by making a stunning return to Friday Night SmackDown. But he's not here for a warm welcome, he's here to settle a score. Paul Heyman, Roman Reigns' special counsel, quickly finds himself cornered in a tense and emotional standoff. Is this the beginning of a new war in WWE? Has the most unpredictable man in WWE finally returned to rewrite history, or burn it down once again? Tonight, the wrestling world trembles, because Dean Ambrose, the Lunatic Fringe, is back. And his first target? Not Roman Reigns. Not Seth Rollins. But Paul Heyman. The mastermind behind the rise, the fall, and the silence that followed. In a backstage confrontation dripping with old grudges and unresolved pain, Ambrose didn't just return. He returned with fire in his eyes, and vengeance on his mind. There was no music. No fanfare. Just a cold camera feed flickering backstage. A shadow moved. A door creaked open. And there, in the dim light of SmackDown's gritty production corridor, stood Dean Ambrose. Leather jacket. Unshaven. A stare colder than winter. The crowd didn't even believe it at first. Was this real? Was this now? But the man walking down that hallway wasn't the Ambrose they remembered. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't smirking. He wasn't playing games. This was a version of Dean that hadn't been seen in years, stripped of theatrics, wrapped in silence. A man who'd been watching, waiting, and perhaps hurting in the dark. And now, with every deliberate step toward the heart of WWE's most powerful alliance, he was ready to erupt. Sources close to WWE say this return wasn't planned. It wasn't cleared. And it certainly wasn't welcomed. But Ambrose didn't care. He wasn't there for permission. He was there for Paul Heyman, the so-called wise man who built the bloodline, whispered into Roman Reigns' ear, and helped destroy everything the Shield once stood for. Security scrambled. Production crews froze. But it was too late. Ambrose had already reached Heyman's door. Inside, Paul Heyman was finishing a private call. Allegedly about SummerSlam strategy, when he turned around and dropped his phone. For the first time in years, the master manipulator didn't have words. His eyes widened. His hands shook. And Dean Ambrose stepped into the room. "You look surprised," Ambrose said, his voice low, steady, unnervingly calm. "Like you didn't think I'd come back." Heyman stammered something inaudible. Maybe a greeting. Maybe a plea. But Ambrose didn't care. His eyes scanned the room like a wolf stalking its prey. Then he laughed, not a manic cackle, but a cold, bitter laugh filled with memories that hadn't healed. "You remember what you told me?" Ambrose asked. "Before I left. Before you handed Roman the keys and slammed the door on everything we built." Heyman remained silent. "You said there's no room for chaos in a kingdom built on fear," Ambrose whispered. "You said the Shield was dead, and I'd be next if I didn't get out." That was the moment tension shattered the silence. Dean Ambrose, the man once known for unpredictability, now stood as the one thing Paul Heyman never planned for, a ghost from the past with nothing left to lose. And somewhere, Roman Reigns was watching, because if Paul Heyman was the brain of the bloodline, Ambrose once was the pulse of the Shield, and the betrayal cut deeper than any chair shot ever could. The Shield didn't break apart. It was dismantled. Rebuilt. Weaponized. And behind it all was Heyman, pulling strings like a master puppeteer, smiling as the empire grew on the ashes of something sacred. Now, the ghost had returned to reclaim the fire. What followed backstage was never supposed to air. But WWE cameras, either by mistake or by design, captured it all. And fans saw something raw. Real. Dangerous. Ambrose stepped closer to Heyman, closing the space between them. Not aggressively. Not violently. But with purpose. His voice dropped lower. I heard what you said after I left. That I was never meant to last in WWE. That I was unstable. Broken. Just another crack in Roman's crown. Heyman's lips moved, but no sound came out. Ambrose smiled again, and this time it wasn't cold. It was haunted. You know what's funny, Paul? You're right. He paused. I was broken. I was angry. I was lost. But not anymore. You see, Paul, some of us don't stay broken. Some of us get better in the dark. And that's when the locker room door opened. Not by force, but fate. Roman Reigns wasn't there. Seth Rollins wasn't there. But the air shifted like thunder before a storm. The camera feed cut out. The screen went black. And WWE fans everywhere were left with one undeniable truth: Dean Ambrose is back. And he's not here for redemption. He's here for reckoning. WWE insiders say the reaction backstage was immediate chaos. Superstars were pulled aside. Security doubled. Management convened emergency meetings. Because no one, not even Triple H, had expected this. But maybe that was the point. Because Ambrose doesn't ask permission. He doesn't wait for storylines. He creates them. Forces them. Bleeds them into reality. And now, with one silent stare, he's reignited a feud that could engulf everything the bloodline has built. Fans began speculating, is this the return of the Shield? A war between Ambrose and Reigns? Or something deeper? Because in Ambrose's eyes, this wasn't about Roman. It was about Heyman. The man who sat quietly as Seth betrayed the Shield, who empowered Roman to rule with tyranny, and who whispered in the shadows while Dean was chewed up and thrown aside. And now, the man once called the Lunatic Fringe is more dangerous than ever, because he's no longer trying to belong. He's trying to burn it all down. As Friday night SmackDown ended in a flurry of panicked commentary and stunned silence, fans took to social media with one question echoing through the timeline. What does Ambrose want? The answer might not be as simple as revenge. This is a man shaped by years of exile. A man who once tore through the WWE with barbed wire and fire extinguishers. A man who broke bones, his own and others, in pursuit of chaos. But now, Dean Ambrose has returned with something scarier than unpredictability. Clarity. And when a man like Ambrose knows exactly who to blame, and exactly how to destroy them, no one is safe. Especially not Paul Heyman. Especially not Roman Reigns. Because if Ambrose has truly returned to WWE, then the era of strategy and silence is over. And a new chapter, violent, bloody, and painfully personal, is just beginning. In the days leading up to SmackDown, there were whispers. Cryptic tweets. Locker room murmurs about someone watching from the shadows. But no one connected the dots. No one guessed it could be him. Dean Ambrose had made his name on chaos. Exploding TV sets, locker room brawls, unhinged promos that left even Michael Cole shaken. But what no one realized is that silence can be more dangerous than noise. That absence can breed intent. And now, with one appearance, he's changed the landscape of WWE again. Behind the scenes, Paul Heyman hasn't spoken publicly since the confrontation. But multiple sources report he left the arena immediately after the segment aired, flanked by security. Eyewitnesses say he looked shaken. Pale, stiff, visibly rattled in a way fans haven't seen since Brock Lesnar walked away from him at SummerSlam 2022. And Roman? Still silent. But you can feel it, the tension, the unease, the shift in energy. Because when a man like Dean Ambrose reappears, the whole house of cards trembles. This wasn't just a return. This was a message. And if WWE doesn't listen, Dean Ambrose will make sure they do. The next morning, the headlines were relentless. Ambrose is back. Heyman shaken backstage. Roman's kingdom faces internal collapse. But while fans speculated, backstage personnel whispered a far more chilling truth: Dean Ambrose didn't just return to settle scores. He returned to tear the soul out of WWE's most powerful faction. Because for Dean, this wasn't about payback. This was personal. Insiders say Ambrose didn't speak to anyone else that night. No locker room visits. No handshakes. No reunion hugs with old friends. He came in through a side entrance. And when the job was done, he vanished through the back exit like a ghost slipping through the walls of an empire that thought it had buried him. Paul Heyman, meanwhile, refused to make his usual Smackdown exit in front of cameras. For the first time in over a year, he skipped his post-show meeting with Roman Reigns. Staffers say he went straight to his private SUV, doors locked, head down. Some say he was making phone calls. Others say he was simply sitting there, not speaking. Just breathing. And what about Roman? He never showed up that night. Because that's the part that truly disturbed Heyman. Ambrose didn't confront Roman Reigns directly. Not yet. He didn't need to. He went after the mind of the bloodline. The voice in Roman's ear. The architect of power. Because when you shake the head, the body soon follows. Within 24 hours, WWE locker rooms were buzzing. Veterans began pulling young talent aside. The phrase "watch your back" echoed like a warning shot in the halls. No one knew where Ambrose would strike next. But everyone knew he would. And perhaps no one knew it better than Seth Rollins. Because Rollins, the other surviving third of the Shield, has been walking his own dangerous tightrope between alliances. He's danced with Paul Heyman. He's mocked Roman. He sided with enemies, then burned bridges just for the flame. But Dean? Dean never played chess. He was the fire itself. And now, that fire was spreading. Word spread fast that Rollins requested extra security for his upcoming Raw appearance. He made light of it in interviews, joking about ghosts from the past, but those close to him say it wasn't a joke at all. He knows how Dean operates. He knows Ambrose doesn't just attack bodies. He attacks legacies. And Seth Rollins has a legacy built on betrayal. Backstage in WWE, plans are reportedly being rewritten. SummerSlam cards are on hold. Creative meetings are in chaos. Because Dean Ambrose isn't a superstar you write into a story, he becomes the story. And now, the machine that once called him unstable has to deal with the one thing they never expected: a calm, calculating Dean Ambrose, back with a mission. Some are calling it a redemption arc. But if you listen closely to what Ambrose actually said, there's no talk of forgiveness. No talk of coming home. Just silence. Just that steady stare aimed like a weapon at Heyman's chest. Because when Dean left WWE all those years ago, he didn't leave in disgrace. He left in defiance. He refused to play the game. He refused to be scripted, silenced, and sold to an audience hungry for catchphrases and t-shirts. And WWE, well, they wrote him off. Buried his name under copyrights and contracts. Treated his departure as a phase. Something they'd outlive. But what they didn't realize is that sometimes silence grows teeth. And now it's back to bite. Fans are already speculating what this means. Could this be the start of a new faction? Is Ambrose assembling his own war party to dismantle the bloodline from the inside out? Or is he here alone, a one-man reckoning with no allies and no endgame but destruction? One thing's clear: Paul Heyman knows more than he's letting on. During an emergency talent briefing held the following Saturday, Heyman reportedly addressed the roster via Zoom, citing containment and story protection as top priorities moving forward. But those who were on the call say Heyman looked changed. Gone was the confident, smug puppet master. What they saw instead was a man peering over his shoulder, a man who just had a mirror held up to his own legacy. And what he saw wasn't brilliance. It was betrayal. Because while Heyman spent years building Roman Reigns into a god king, he forgot the cost. He sacrificed brothers, he erased history. He rewrote legacies not with honor, but with omission, and Dean Ambrose? He was the chapter they tried to delete. But Dean never needed a spotlight. He didn't need headlines. He just needed time and a reason. And now, both have collided on live television in a moment that has shaken the WWE universe to its core. Fans are combing through old Shield promos, rewatching interviews, trying to connect dots that maybe were never meant to be seen. A Reddit post analyzing Ambrose's final promo in 2019 is trending again, with fans now realizing just how prophetic some of his final words were. "You'll miss me when the silence gets too loud," he said. Now that silence has a name. A presence. A purpose. WWE officials have gone into lockdown mode. Sources claim multiple top executives were briefed on potential storyline disruptions, and that even Triple H has personally stepped in to monitor the fallout. According to one production staffer, this wasn't a comeback. It was a declaration of war. But here's the twist. Dean Ambrose didn't touch Paul Heyman. Not physically. There was no attack. No punch. No chokehold. And that's what scares people the most. Because Ambrose is a man known for explosions. But now? He's choosing patience. And when a man like that holds back, it means he's planning something far worse. The Shield may be gone, but their ghosts still haunt WWE. And now, with Seth Rollins nursing a fractured knee, Roman Reigns absent from television, and Paul Heyman walking through the locker room like a man who's already seen his own obituary, the timing couldn't be more perfect. Dean Ambrose didn't come back to talk. He came back to watch it all fall apart. And he's going to start with the man who whispered lies into Roman's ears, and turned brotherhood into dictatorship. Paul Heyman is many things. But even he can't outtalk a reckoning. Especially one wearing a leather jacket, and a memory full of unfinished business. The air was thick in the locker room corridors of Smackdown the following week. Not with smoke, not with fog, but with fear. A kind of lingering tension that clung to every doorknob, every monitor, every pair of eyes peeking cautiously down the hallway. Paul Heyman had cancelled all media obligations. No interviews. No backstage interviews. Nothing. He wasn't answering texts. He wasn't even speaking in production meetings. Because in the aftermath of Dean Ambrose's return, Paul Heyman had become a marked man. But silence can only last so long. And in WWE, silence always precedes the roar. That Friday night, just before the main event, something strange happened. The Tribal Chief's music didn't hit. The lights didn't dim. The entrance wasn't choreographed. Instead, a handheld camera flicked on, raw, uncut, capturing the backstage garage door rising slowly. And standing there, surrounded by black SUVs and security who didn't dare step forward, was Roman Reigns. No cape. No crown. No Usos. Just Roman. Hoodie pulled over his head, sweat dripping from his brow, eyes locked in on the lens like it owed him a blood debt. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to, the message was clear, he had returned. But unlike before, the tribal drums weren't pounding in triumph. They were thudding with unease. Because this time, Roman wasn't returning to defend his empire, he was returning to face the shadow he thought he'd left behind. Dean Ambrose. For years, Roman Reigns reigned as the unchallenged monarch of WWE, his enemies fell, his family rose, and Paul Heyman stood at his side whispering war strategies like a modern-day Rasputin. Together, they didn't just win matches, they rewrote history. They turned betrayal into power, loneliness into legacy. But there was always one name missing from the story. One chapter that never got closure. One brother who walked away not in defeat, but in disgust. Dean Ambrose, and now, he was back. Roman didn't call for a microphone that night. Instead, he walked past catering, past the Bloodline's private locker room, and straight to production. Camera operators froze. Scripts were thrown out. According to eyewitnesses, Roman Reigns looked everyone in the eye and said just 4 words, "Where is he now?" No one answered, because no one knew. Ambrose hadn't been seen since the confrontation with Heyman. No hotel check-ins. No sign-in sheet signatures. No scheduled appearances. It was as if he was a phantom, appearing only when the moment mattered most, then vanishing like a wraith into the WWE machinery. And that made him dangerous. Sources say Roman didn't return for theatrics. He returned for control. He'd spent the last few months off television healing, not just physically, but mentally. Watching his kingdom grow in his absence. Watching Paul Heyman make decisions without him. Watching Solo Sikoa rise in stature. Watching Seth Rollins gain sympathy. But none of it stung like the ghost that came knocking. Dean Ambrose hadn't just disrupted a storyline. He shook the foundation of everything Roman Reigns built. And perhaps what scared Roman most is that Dean wasn't after the title. He didn't challenge for belts. He didn't demand main events. He didn't even ask for a match. He just showed up, stared Heyman in the face, and left the door open, because for Ambrose, this isn't a rivalry, it's a reckoning. By Saturday morning, WWE had already shifted into emergency creative planning. The rumors were rampant. Was Ambrose back on a full-time deal? Is this sanctioned? Did Roman and Seth know ahead of time? What's Triple H's involvement? But backstage, the fear wasn't about answers. It was about questions that no one had the courage to ask. Because when Dean Ambrose walks through a door, you don't worry about the storyline. You worry about the walls. You worry about what explodes first. The Alliance or the arena? Sunday morning came with an even bigger shock. A leaked photo, grainy, shaky, snapped by a fan in Chicago, showed Dean Ambrose sitting alone at a diner. No entourage. No gear bag. No WWE security. Just Ambrose, sipping coffee, flipping through a worn-out paperback. The caption? He smiled when he saw I recognized him. Said, "See you Friday." Friday Smackdown, a promise or a warning? The WWE universe began buzzing. Theories flooded Reddit, Twitter, YouTube. Fans dissected every old promo, every feud, every facial expression. What did Ambrose want? Why Heyman? Why now? And then, why didn't he say a single word to Roman Reigns? The answer may lie deeper than most dare to admit. Because when Roman Reigns rose to power, he didn't just shed his Shield gear. He shed his past. He let Paul Heyman rewrite the narrative, transforming Roman into the tribal messiah, the indomitable champion, the head of the table. But he didn't do it alone. He did it by erasing everything that came before. The Shield wasn't mentioned, Ambrose was a ghost, brotherhood became taboo. And yet, here's the truth, without the Shield, there is no Roman Reigns. There is no bloodline. There is no empire. There are only ruins, and the man who remembers them. Dean Ambrose was never meant to be a prince. He was the wild card. The weapon. The chaos that balanced the power between Roman's stoicism and Seth's ego. And when it all fell apart, they moved on. But Ambrose? He watched it all, from the outside, from the shadows. And now he's returned, not to fight Roman's battles, but to remind him of the ones he never finished. Heyman was just the beginning, Roman is next. As the sun set on the final hour of Smackdown, Roman stepped into the ring. Unannounced. The arena didn't play his music. The lighting didn't shift. There was no pyro, no pageantry. Just Roman, in a black t-shirt, mic in hand, and a stare that burned like a funeral flame. He didn't yell, he didn't posture. He simply raised the microphone, and whispered, "You should have stayed gone." That was all. Then he dropped the mic and walked out, no music. No stare down. Just an empty ring, a silent stage. And the realization that for the first time in years, Roman Reigns is afraid. Not of losing a title, not of Solo Sikoa turning. Not even of Paul Heyman failing him, he's afraid of the man he once called brother. The one who never needed a belt to be dangerous, the one who's not coming for gold, he's coming for truth, and in WWE, truth is the most terrifying weapon of all. The following week, WWE production trucks were instructed to remove all remaining Shield-era footage from upcoming video packages. One source said it was a direct order. Not from a producer, not from Heyman, but from Roman Reigns himself. He didn't want Ambrose's name uttered, he didn't want his face in flashbacks. He didn't want his voice heard during any highlight reel tied to the Bloodline's legacy. Because this time, Roman wasn't just protecting his title, he was protecting the lie. The lie that he built his empire alone, the lie that the Shield was just a chapter, the lie that Dean Ambrose had been forgotten, but some ghosts don't wait for permission. Some ghosts speak, and this one had finally found his voice. It happened late Friday night, minutes before the final commercial break of Smackdown. Just as the crowd was preparing for the main event, just as commentary began hyping Solo Sikoa's dominance, just as everything felt normal. The screen glitched, the lights dimmed, and the feed cut to black and white. There was no music. No vignette. Just grainy handheld footage, like something leaked from a security cam. And there, sitting in a folding chair, against a cinder block wall, his elbows on his knees, and his eyes locked on the camera, was Dean Ambrose. He didn't blink, he didn't smile, he just stared, and then, softly, as if he were confessing something to a priest, he spoke. You ever sit so long in silence that your own voice starts to scare you? He looked down, flexed his hands, then continued. That's what I've been doing. Sitting. Watching. Listening. And the whole time, people kept telling stories. Roman built this. Paul Heyman did that. The Bloodline is unstoppable. The Shield? Just a memory. A phase. An origin story. He paused, leaned back in the chair. Funny thing about origin stories, you forget how bloody they are. You forget what it cost. You forget the nights we didn't sleep. The bones we broke. The secrets we buried just to keep that dream alive. I didn't forget. I couldn't. I lived it. The camera trembled slightly, as if whoever was recording realized they were capturing something too real for television. Ambrose continued. You all moved on. Seth with his suits and his symphonies. Roman with his empire and his mouthpiece. But I never left the battlefield. I just went underground. He leaned forward again, that dangerous calm returning. So here's the truth. I'm not back for a title. I don't need Roman's belt. I'm not here for nostalgia. I don't care about reunions. I came back for one reason. He held up a single finger. To make you all look in the mirror and admit what you did. To each other. To me. To this business. I'm not here to wrestle. I'm here to haunt. And then, just before the feed cut out, he said one final thing. Hey Roman, you were never the tribal chief. You were just the loudest voice in a room full of silence. And I'm not quiet anymore. The screen went black, silence swept the arena. Michael Cole stammered on commentary. Corey Graves was speechless. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't boo. They just absorbed it, a moment so raw, so unscripted, it didn't feel like a promo. It felt like a man crawling back from the edge of himself, and that's when the trap was set, because Roman Reigns finally reacted. Reports began leaking within hours. WWE insiders claimed Roman demanded a match. Not at SummerSlam. Not at Survivor Series. Not even at a premium live event. He wanted Dean Ambrose, face-to-face, on Smackdown. No belts. No stipulations. No interference, just two men, one throne, one betrayal, one confrontation, 7 years in the making. The announcement didn't come from WWE's official social accounts. It didn't trend on Twitter. It wasn't part of any graphic package. It was whispered backstage. It was hinted at by Paul Heyman on Talking Smack, cryptic words about unfinished business.